So what exactly are clear aligners? Clear aligners are an effective alternate to traditional orthodontics, which is braces, because they use a system of clear removable trays, which is used to straighten the teeth. Each aligner is custom made to fit over your teeth and is designed to gradually move your teeth into the proper position. So meaning whatever the work the braces was doing, we can utilize the same movement, but instead of doing braces, which are fixed onto the teeth, for whatever reason that the patient and the doctor chooses to have something more transparent, something more clear, something more removable, and at the same time not compromising the treatment, the best alternative is clear aligners. So you have braces, which is the fixed option. You have aligners, which is the removable option. So braces are visible. You have ceramic, you have metal, you have insignia, you have a lot of braces nowadays. A lot of Chinese companies have come, so it's a plethora of options that you have. On the other hand, you have again a lot of companies coming. But usually in my practice, I stick to only two types of aligners. One is the high end, which is for patients who say, I want something which is made abroad. We get Invisalign, and we have something we have which is local. I would do Veristic. So I would keep my armamentarium very simple. I have a, you could say, an imported option and a made in India option. So today we'll be discussing about how these aligners actually work. So many patients come and ask me, oh, it's just a piece of plastic. How will it work? It's something so simple, something so transparent. How exactly does it work? So first, as doctors, we need to understand what these aligners are. How does this simple plastic, what is this plastic? So basically, let me just see if I have, yeah, if you could people see here, I'm just going to try to. So these are aligners. What are these? These are nothing but simple plastic. This is designed to fit onto the teeth. But you have to remember that you're not going to give only one of these. You're going to give multiple. Okay, I'll come to that later. So this is called PETG, polyethylene terephthalate glutamic acid. It's a big expansion. So PETG is the material, PETG. So it is a biocompatible plastic, as you can see, what is mentioned in the literature. We normally use 0.75 to 0.8 mm of thickness. Sometimes in very extremely tipped teeth, I would suggest the use of 0.6 mm, very rarely. But to reduce the armamentarium in the lab, they normally use around 0.8 mm or 0.75 mm. What is the amount of movement I can expect with every aligner? So if I give one aligner to the tooth, to the patient, it can induce in a matter of 2 weeks an average of 0.25 to 0.3. 0.15 is really less, but in most cases, an average of 0.25 to 0.3 mm of movement is possible. We can do more, but it has to be within the biological limit. It's called optimum orthodontic force. So if I'm doing braces, I would say 20 to 25 grams of force per root surface area. So the same thing, if I want the same amount of movement with an aligner, I would say every aligner can induce or should induce a movement of 0.25 to 0.3 mm of movement. We can increase it, but it is not good for the periodontal status of the tooth. So elasticity of the material is a very important. So basically these are plastics which can flex. You can see I'm just pressing the material. I'm pretty sure most of you have seen retainers. So retainers are made with 1 mm sheet. That is why aligners, we have to use a slightly lesser sheet, so induce the flexibility. So the flexibility of the material, elasticity of the material is what induces the tooth movement. So the second most important point in this is the occlusal forces. Occlusal forces act as an important for activating upline, because every time the patient swallows, he's inducing a occlusal force onto the aligner, which actually help in transmitting the forces onto the tooth. Auxiliaries, as you will see as we go on in the seminar, that certain buttons and attachments and elastics have to be used in conjunction with the aligners for bringing about effective tooth movement. I hope I'm audible to everybody because few people need to check the audio settings. Okay. William R. Prophet was considered one of the pioneers in orthodontic field. In 1986, he had classified an orthodontic appliance. It could be a removable appliance, it could be a fixed appliance. So he said any appliance should not interfere with the function. It should work properly. It should not induce any harm to the soft tissues. It should be light, inconspicuous, meaning not that visible, if possible, aesthetic, strong enough to withstand masticative forces, shouldn't break so easily. Retained firmly onto the tooth, because unless it is not retained, it won't exert the desired amount of forces onto the teeth. Good anchorage control. How exactly does a plastic move the teeth, or an aligner move the teeth? So if suppose I want to move this central incisor, which is slightly, I feel it's not in alignment. I want that particular tooth, which you can see on the screen, to be rotated slightly, fine-tuned. So I would want my aligner, you can see there was nothing there, to induce a force which would do something called a couple force for me. I want the tooth to be rotated in that axis. It has to move palatally near the midline and buccally on the distal contact. So any aligner which can do this correction for me, you can see there, I'll just go back and forth. Any aligner which can induce this movement for me is what I need. So how does it do? We'll be discussing as we progress. So you need to understand that most of these aligners are made with state-of-the-art 3D printers, state-of-the-art scanners. Even with Veristic, they have beautiful setup. Bangalore. The sheets that are used, as of now, technically are not manufactured in India. It has to be imported. 0.8 mm sheets we use for aligners. So each of these sheets with elasticity is planned on the computer, and several sets of, we call it sub steps. There are a lot of steps divided. Suppose I want to move from point A to point B. So that is divided into separate movements. So each aligner causes a little bit of the teeth to move. Next aligner causes a little more. Next aligner causes a little more. So every time a patient goes on to a new aligner, it's not that only this central incisor is moving. Suppose I have a cannon which is rotated, can be exerted to move, can be induced to move. I have a lateral which is rotated the other way, can be induced. So many movements are taking place in one aligner. It's not that in one aligner I'm moving only my central incisor. I can induce multiple movements of multiple teeth, but it has to be in the range of 0.25 to 0.3 mm. That is why we need a number of aligners for moving the teeth. So like I mentioned, if I want to rotate the tooth, I want to put an aligner, design the aligner so that it induces certain amount of force for rotation. Can one aligner straighten teeth? Definitely not, but a series of aligners can. Every movement is divided into several sub-steps. The principle of orthodontic movement, which applies to braces, which applies to removable appliance, which applies to any appliances that is used intraoral and extraoral. Basically, we want something which can apply prolonged pressure onto the tooth, which induces remodeling, the biology of the bone. We remember in your PDS days, you had this textbook which showed one side they will be building a wall, on the other side the wall is being broken. So as that is happening, the wall will move. So bone deposition on one side, bone resorption on the other. So the tooth moves on the side of the bone resorption. So I wouldn't want to go into the depth of that. So basically remodeling of bone happens whether you have a light force or a heavy force. But if it's heavy force, you're going to have necrosis of the bone and you may not have the desired movement. So it has to be optimum, not too light, not too heavy. So correct amount of force. So remodeling of bone brings about tooth movement. Again, how should the force be? It should neither be continuous. For example, if patient is having braces and the doctor, normally orthodontist comes and he pulls an E-chain continuous from one side of the molar to the other, you will see that the first, most of the movement is happened in the first 2 to 3 weeks. But by the time the patient comes after a month and the doctor removes the E-chain, it's kind of dead. So the forces are utilized. So it's not a continuous, even though it is heavy, continuous, initially it becomes very light and inconspicuous by end of the month. Secondly, you have interrupted forces. Let's say the patient, you give a Hawley's appliance or a removable spring or any type of spring for inducing movements. Every time the patient removes, the force is gone. So again, those are interrupted. So what is ideal for an aligner? What is ideal for a proper channelized movement is an intermittent force where the patient wears aligner number 1 for 2 weeks. So in these 2 weeks, the bone remodeling takes place probably by end of the first week, and the second week the movement happens. How do you maintain the force? You change to the aligner number 2. So it's a brand new aligner. It's doing fresh force. So next 2 weeks, the aligner number 2 induces the same amount of light continuous force. So intermittent forces divided into different aligners. That's the beauty of aligners. The force is always exerted, but it's very light. Characteristics of Verestic aligners: 0.6 to 1 mm, because some patients we give them a 1 mm aligner in the last stage when it's like really fine movement. It's called refinement stage. Sometimes we do 1 mm, but on an average it's 0.8 mm sheet. Duration of wear, why, like I mentioned, it is 2 mm. I'm sorry, 2 weeks per aligner. The patient doesn't wear it for eating and brushing. Very important to remember this. So what is the movement per aligner? It's around 0.5 to 0.3. I would say 0.25 to 0.3. What exactly are the cases as a practitioner, as an orthodontist, as a dental practitioner? Can I do aligners? If you had certain doubts in your mind, if you had certain clarifications, you can always shoot questions at the end of the session. So I would just brief through what kind of cases I would recommend to be done with aligners. So basically, any aligner can induce tipping. What does tipping mean? If this is my tooth, it is proclined, central incisor on the lateral view. I want my tooth to straighten, right? So this is the central incisor which is flared. I want it to go backwards. So this is called free tipping or control tipping. There are two types. So if most of the aligners, please remember, works by tipping. So bodily movements is possible to some extent, but a lot of bodily movement is not possible. So what kind of movements can I do with aligners? So incisors and canines, they are more broader teeth. You can see the central incisor especially has a broad flat surface. So it is important that you have a snug fit of the aligner. The aligner has to go and fit snugly. So which is why incisors work very well. Even a rotation up to 90 degrees, I can beautifully rotate it. Canines, again, it depends. Upper canines, I can have better movement because they are more bulky and sometimes more flatter debuccal surface. So I can get up to 45 to 50 degrees of movement in incisors and canines. In premolars and molars, I can get up to 30 and only up to 10 degrees. So molars are really strong anchored teeth, especially lower molar. You can see they have 4 roots. They are solid cortical bone, and it's very difficult to move molars. So molars, in terms of linear movement, I would say 1 to 2 millimeters, not more than that. In terms of degrees, not more than 10 degrees. So most of our movements in aligners, you have to remember, is mesial to second premolar. For example, if I would want to vertically tip this tooth, you can see it's distally tipped. I would want to straighten it. How many aligners would I need? In this case, I required around 15 aligners. So this is a simple class 1 malocclusion with the upper anterior tipping. The tipping can be buccolingual or mesodistal, both ways. So of late, we have started doing attachments as well, which I will explain how to do an attachment, because many practitioners say that I have problems with IPR attachments. We will be briefing you on the same. This was 2009 or 8. It was probably my initial cases, you can see. So I couldn't get hold of correcting the deep bite fully because the patient lived in another state, and not many doctors were practicing the aligners at that point of time. So even my own teacher said that aligners don't work. So I went ahead and did the case, and I showed him, sir, at least the patient has better smile, better occlusion. I haven't hampered the posterior occlusion. At the same time, I have given him a desirable tooth position. So we required around 28 in the upper and 20 lower. So it's very important to understand that patient cooperation is very important in these sort of cases. Aligners. Rotations. So any amount of rotation is possible. Incisors, I would say maybe 90 to 100 degrees. Canines, less than 60 degrees, possible without attachments. Greater than 60, you need some sort of couple elastics. I'll show you what is that. Premolars, again, upper premolars are more broader and you have a little flat surface, more surface area for the plastic to grip. So without attachments, it is difficult. With couple elastics, it is possible. Molars were not easy to rotate. So like I said, it's solidly anchored teeth in the bone. This is an example of rotation. You can see there, the tooth is rotated. It's a lateral incisor. I would want to rotate it and with the use of aligners. So probably these sort of cases, you can do just the upper arch. If the lower is already aligned and patient is not having any complaint, you don't have to even do the lower in these cases because you're not messing with the occlusion, you're just rotating one particular tooth. Little bit of IPR may have been required on the canine lateral and molar incisor on that side so that we can get certain space to correct the tooth. So these sort of rotations, especially like I said, laterals and centrals are flat teeth. We get more surface area for the aligner to grip. So if the plastic can grip any tooth, it is very nice to rotate it. We get good results, predictable results. This is an example of a couple elastic. You can see there, attachment which would be a lingual button which is placed over there to place a button. So wherever you're going to place the button, buttons are auxiliaries which normally available with your dental supplier or with your orthodontist. It's like a bracket, but it just has a handle like a door knob, so you can engage an elastic or a keychain. So basically, most premolars are single rooted tooth or they are conical roots. Even when you go take the case of your upper premolar, they are conical roots as they go towards the apex. So it is possible that if you can induce a couple force, having them on both sides and just rotating it, you could induce a rotational correction. Cross bites, again, incisors, canines, premolars can be rotated. Molars, it's not so easy. You can see an example of a lateral incisor there, which is in cross bite. It's beautifully corrected in the alignment. So this would be classified something like a class 1 malocclusion with a crowding. So we need around 25 aligners for the upper arch and 14 for the lower. So most of these cases, it's important to realize that you need to gain a little bit of space to correct this crossbite. So you'll have to slightly procline the teeth. You can see there the upper incisors look slightly proclined. And then a bit of IPR has to be done, interproximal reduction or proximal stripping, whatever we call it. Open bites, less than 2 mm, yes, definitely possible without attachments, but I would use an attachment in most cases. Greater than 2 mm, I wouldn't advise the use of aligners. So there are articles to say that exclusive movements are difficult to achieve with plastic aligners, but this was way back in 2009. But with the addition of attachments where I would place rectangular or round attachments near the cervical 1/3 of the upper anteriors and then engage the aligner, I would get some sort of an exclusive force to correct the open bite. So you can see these cases. It's interesting to note that there's an overjet this situation. I would say maybe more than 7 mm. And by the time I create some sort of spaces with IPR or proximal stripping in the upper arch, so by the time I retract the teeth, the bite deepens. So there is a particular concept, I would say, in orthodontics where you have an open bite case and the upper incisors are proclined. As the teeth are retracted backwards, the bite deepens. So it happens in most of the cases. We have to control this bite deepening, normally in braces, but with aligners, we have to use it for our advantage, especially in open bite cases. But 80% to 90% of cases are deep bite. So this was one of my cases. You can see there, she had a bit of a tongue thrust. So whatever has to be done to control the tongue thrust by giving a tongue thrusting appliance, like I'll call it a palatal crib, that has to be done. There's no question or no doubt about it. Once the habit is controlled, patient is taught how to do a proper swallow. Then you go ahead, educate him about the compliance with the aligners. Go ahead and then do the case. You can see there, as the teeth tipped back, the bite deepened. We didn't have to do any attachments. So whenever the teeth are tipped, your open bite is not more than 2 millimeters. Just do the case, it will finish beautifully like that. 25 upper aligners and 25 lower aligners. So assuming in terms of time, if you're looking at every aligner is changed in 2 weeks. So in less than 1 year, you can finish this case. Deep bites, like I said, most of my patients have deep bite, crowding, minor crowding. It is possible to intrude both the upper and lower incisors. Now with the advent of attachments, it's even more better. Sometimes by relative intrusion of upper arterial population. Now we can also add attachments to lower premolars where we flatten the curve of Spee by raising the lower premolars with use of attachments. Usually the lower curve of Spee is deep. So if I raise the lower premolars and first and second premolars, I'm flattening the curve of Spee, some sort of deep bite correction will happen. And also by relative intrusion of upper and lower anteriors. You can see there, this case, slight amount of arch expansion we got from there to there. Beautiful deep bite correction. But whenever there's deep bite, we will need additional aligners. We will need at least 10 to 12 aligners just to augment the deep bite. You can also see how the midline has been maintained, how the arch form is beautiful. Also remember that you have to procline in some cases where the teeth, this is called a class 2 division 2 case. Class 2 division 2 is where your central incisors are distally tipped, your laterals are overlapping and buccally placed, and you have a complete deep bite. So it's a typical class 2 division 2. So it's important that you procline the upper incisors to give a correct torque to the central incisor. You can see a case there where I could get a beautiful correction of the spacing, wonderful correction of the deep bite. I was very happy because patient was not, most of the patients don't say don't come with the chief complaint of I need to correct my deep bite. So their concern is the space. The midline diastema is one thing which they say it puts people off. So I need to have a confident smile. I've stopped smiling because I have a huge space and I wouldn't want to do any cosmetic procedures. Can you help me? So I say, okay, why not? Let's do aligners. So in simple cases like this, just closing the space you'll finish in 15 aligners. But what if you want to correct the deep bite? You will need at least 10 to 15 more. Okay. So when patient has paid so much, tell them I will do one step better. I will correct the deep bite as well. And it's important for the stability. So whenever a deep bite has been corrected, the results are more stable. I have some questions popping up, but I think I'll take up the questions at the ending. I'm sorry. Crowding can be resolved to an extent through extractions, IPR, and expansion. Expansion, I would say, since it's a plastic, the teeth are firmly anchored, especially the molars and secondary molars. So most of my expansion will be in the canine premolar region. Most cases, it's important that you have to do proximal stripping. So today we have designated few slides just for proximal stripping because what are the methods, what sort of burrs do you use, how do you do it, how do you finish the case, what are the problems, I will just be running that through. So this case you can see the arrow marks on the left side show that all those contact points you had to break probably around 0.3 to 0.4 mm of spacing had to be created to break the contact, create proximal spacing, and then do the aligners. So you can get beautiful arch form correction At the same time, you can see the posterior space for an FPD or an implant was maintained. So such sort of cases where you just need maybe 10 to 12 aligners, not more than that. So the good thing about Veristic is they can customize your cases, saying suppose you need only 10 aligners. You can say I need only lower arch, I need only 10 aligners, I need within a week, they will do it for you. It's not possible with the other companies, I'm pretty sure of that. Severe crowding, yes. Would I do a severe crowding with extractions or without extraction as my initial case? No, I would first ask you to, for beginners, start with simple cases, spacing. I'll tell you why spacing is my favorite and easy as we progress. So start with spacing cases. But if you have a cases where you have severe crowding and you want to do it, yes, we can help you. But you have to be very good in managing the contacts, that is doing the proximal stripping and then taking up the case. Otherwise, if you do excess of proximal stripping or you do less proximal stripping, both are not advisable. Your result will not be the same. You can see there the arch form. It is constricted, narrow near the canine premolar. It's like a class 2 division 1 kind of occlusion, end-on occlusion. Anyway, so class 2 division 1 usually have a canine premolar constriction in the upper arch. So I could get a good correction in the upper arch. Again, you can see whenever I procline, I gain some space. Whenever I do IPR, I gain some space. So 25 upper arch, 21 lower. This is a case where you have to extract. What do I extract? Instead of extracting a healthy second premolar, I would do premolar which has a amalgam filling on both the sides. So normally first premolar is the choice of extraction so that I don't, the canine is just off that. So it's easier to extract the premolar and then get the canine which is buccally placed in that space. So I could get a good arch form, a good alignment and a maintenance of the occlusion at the posterior level. So such cases can be done, but you can see the number of aligners goes up to 35, sometimes 45 also, depending on the complexity of the case. Like I said, spacing, it is my favorite topic, especially because spacing works wonders. It works very smoothly. Up to 8 millimeters of spaces can be closed very, very beautifully with aligners. So basically, aligners work by tipping moment. When there are large spaces, you have a sequential tipping and uprating. Suppose this is my tooth, and the lower is the crown, upper is the root portion. Normally, if it's small spaces, the tooth just moves like that. But if it is a long space, we can design so that the crown moves, then the root moves. The crown moves, then the root moves. So this is sort of like a bodily movement. It's not exactly bodily. You could say it's a sequential movement of the crown and the root to mimic the bodily movement. Because large spaces you cannot just close like that. The roots will go in a different direction. So it has to, the crown has to come, root has to come, the crown has to come. So it is planned in the aligner so that you have sequential movements of the crown and the roots. A case like this where I want to give a prosthesis or an implant for a missing lateral incisor, I would want to close the midline by moving the central incisor mesially, the 2-1, sorry, the 1-1. So in this case, I would want to give aligners, and you can see the progress. I am gaining space for the lateral incisor. So almost when it is final, I can give probably a 1 mm sheet or a 0.8 mm sheet. And the beautiful thing about aligners is we can combine it to make it look aesthetic. You can see the space was derived and then an implant was placed. But how do you maintain that space before we load the implant? You can ask the patient to wear a retainer with an SX or with the aligner, which is the last one. The last aligner can be used, and you can fill flowable composite into that and cure it. So it look like a tooth when the patient wears the retainer. So multiple uses can be done of the aligners, maintenance of spacing, filling with composite for aesthetic looks, and so on. So space management can be planned to augment your prosthetic workup. So I love such cases where I have spaces and a bit of debite, not too much. Too much debite is a little difficult because number of aligners just shoots up and then you have to charge more to the patient. So I love doing such cases where there's a big, huge diastema and patient is not smiling, and then you get a beautiful arch form. You can see how beautifully the midline has been maintained. Then you can just shape up the tooth. If you want, you can do some veneers if the patient is worried about the shape of the tooth. Again, it's patient dependent and doctor dependent. Space closure works well. That's the moral of the story. Molar movement, like I was saying, not too much of movement is possible. So let's not have too much expectation.